So let me start. And today I'm going to talk about hygiene, epidemics, and Buddhist temples in Japan. And I'm sorry, I can't tell about Buddhist temples, but I'm going to talk about Confucian, okay, and in the 19th century. Okay, thank you. Okay, today's topic, I'm going to talk in 5 sections. The first is introduction. An introduction is mainly about new history of medicine. I do think many of you might not have yet learned a history of medicine or new history of medicine, so I will just have a very brief talk of introducing a new history of medicine. In the second section, I'm going to talk about water. And I do think many of you are very familiar with dealing with water in religious rituals. Okay, so what should I do?
Close.
Oh, okay, close. Can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Okay. So many of you are accustomed to how to deal with water in religious rituals, and you know how to deal with the water resources in the Buddhist rituals. But you know, of course, water has a lot of different framework. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the water in various contexts at the kind of second introduction. And the third point is religion in Japan. And you know, religion in Japan is very difficult to explain, at least for me. But as you know, in the early modern period, many religions in Japan, they did not decline, but they are becoming stable relationship with each other. So that is my major point, and I will look at, of course, Buddhism is one of the most important religion, or perhaps the most important religion in Japan. But of course, Japan has Shintoism, a kind of original religion, and as you might know, the Christianity was prohibited in the mid-17th century until the late 19th century. Okay, but one really important religion or political thinking or philosophy is Confucianism. And when we look at the material from Confucian philosophy, they have a lot of interesting relationship with water, fire, and the earth. Okay, so that is an important part in religion in Japan. In the fourth section, I will look at the water supply by 2 Confucians in the 18th century and in the 19th century. So we are looking at the contribution to public health, contribution to the water supply and river control. The background of these works were Confucian religion and Confucian philosophy. Okay, so that is, and finally, in the 5th section, I'm going to talk about the conclusion. Okay, so this is the framework of my talk today. Now, introduction. My name is Akihito Suzuki, and I learned history of medicine in London, and then came back to Japan and taught at Keio University and University of Tokyo. And if you wanted to look at my English paper, you can have many of them uploaded in the Academia Edu. So please look at these things. Okay. Now, when I started to study history of medicine in the 1980s or 1990s, there was clearly a new history of medicine. I think it started in the 1970s. Okay, and the new history of medicine had a lot of origins, but one of the most general framework is what we call the Hippocratic triangle of disease, patient, and medical practitioner. So let me show, and another thing. So usually medicine have three players. The first is disease, second is the patient, and the third is medical practitioner. Okay, and in the background there are a lot of factors. So something like law, politics, science, economy, technology, nature, environment, commerce, philosophy, culture, and other factors. So this is the most general way of thinking about history of medicine. Okay, so something like this. We do have, okay, usually we do have disease. Okay, disease, and when a patient gets this disease, okay, and then the patient usually call or visit medical practitioner. So these three players are called the Hippocratic triangle. As you might know, Hippocrates, he wrote this framework, or he mentioned to this framework in one of his very great book of Epidemics. Okay, so this is a really important triangle. Okay, and with this triangle we do have medicine. Okay, so when you say medicine, when we say medicine in Japanese, we say something like "e" or something like that, and this means it doesn't incorporate all these three players. So you have to think about these three players, and there we do have medicine. Okay, so and there are a lot of background culture. Okay, so let's look at disease. Okay, and disease have two really important things: nature and environment. These two factors are really important to think about disease. But of course, you need economy or commerce when we think about the disease. Okay, and likewise, if we want to think about patients, there are of course culture, philosophy, and commerce are really important. But you know, a lot of availability of medical practitioners were really important. So we know that politics or science and technology or social system was really important. And of course, for medical practitioners, science and technology were most important, but you need economy and politics. So this is the Hippocratic triangle, and we have to think about a lot of factors to understand these things. So this is the basic understanding of the new history of medicine. We used to have the old history of medicine, which look at mainly medical practitioners. So they picked up really famous doctors like Hippocrates or Galen or Robert Koch or Louis Pasteur, who made great discoveries. And they wrote a very detailed and very good historical material concentrating mainly on medical practitioners. But you know, from the 1970s and the 1980s, we started to discovery of disease and patient, and they are integrated into the world of a lot of factors. So this is the basis of the new history of medicine. So this is the background of my talk. Now, let me move to the water in various contexts. Okay, so I do think many of you might have dealt with water when you are involved into religious rituals, so you may know quite a lot about water. And I'm sorry, I do not have any clear knowledge of the use of water in Buddhist ritual. Okay, but other than that, we do have multiple use of water in society. Okay, so let us look at our own individual activity, okay, or personal use. We drink water, okay, and we do use water in cooking and cleaning and bathing. And I just went to the toilet just a few minutes ago, and there are many other personal use of water. So these are an important part of multiple use of water, okay? And of course, these are really basic things, but if you look at society, you can look at factories, you can look at agriculture. Agriculture use plenty of water just for giving water to rice, vegetables, and all kind of things. And of course, industry uses quite a lot of water, and if you walk into factories, they use a huge amount of water to cool down the material. So the industry is really important part. And of course, transportation. Nowadays, we do have airplane and just train, but about 200 years ago, we do need water for river, canal, shipping, and these are really important part of the transportation of a lot of things in the society. Okay, so this is the perhaps very important part of the use of water. And of course, you have to manage these things, so you have to get water supply, okay? And you have to control of rivers and canals. They are really important part of the making of modern society, okay? So these might not be the major subject for many disciplines, but still water is a really important substance. And by interacting with water, human beings created the modern society. So this is a really important part. Okay, so and final thing, another thing is the new framework of public health. I'm not doing research into the disease of cholera, and if you want to understand the disease, you need to think about the use of water, because the water carries the bacteria. Okay, so how to use water in your own family or in your household, and then that will explain a lot about the spread of cholera in individual homes. Okay, so that is a kind of public health, and the water or the control of water is really important part of our everyday life. Okay, so that is the one of the major questions. Okay, and let me move to the third section, religion in Japan. Okay, and religion in Japan is one of the really difficult subjects to talk about. But usually we say something like this. We do have major two Christianity. Two religions. The first is Shintoism, which is original in Japan, and then Buddhism, which I think Japan imported from Korea in the 6th century or something like that. Yeah, and these two religions were very important. And in the from the late 19th century, we started to have the influence of Christianity. Okay, and there are, you might know that, and I do think you know better than I, about the intense tension or struggle or even war between Shintoist and Buddhism and Christianity that was, became prohibited in the mid-17th century. Okay, so there are a lot of things, but from the 17th century, Japan started to have a kind of stability of religions. And we do have about how many? 12 or 13, or if you count in a different way, something like 30 or a lot of different schools. Okay, and I'm sorry, and okay, and for Shintoism there are also a lot of schools. Okay, so and a very bad joke is during the mid-August, Japanese became Buddhist, and they went to the temple. In the New Year, they became a Shintoist, and they visited Shinto. And in Christmas, they became Christian. So that is a very bad. I think a very bad joke, but still that is a real reality for Japan at the end of the 17th, at the beginning of the present situation. Okay, and one really interesting part is the major question of new religions from the late 19th century. And from the late 19th century, with the lack of the governmental control, or with a kind of freedom to create new religion, we did have a lot of new religions. And some of them had political implications. And I do think in the last 20 or 25 or 30 years ago, we did have Shinrikyo, which had a real threat to the society. So we do have a religion, but my essential message is Japan during the from the 17th to the end of the 19th century, Japan religion was relatively stable. Okay, now what is really important and what we really have is Confucianism. Okay, and Confucianism and Neo-Confucianism from the late 16th century. Of course, I do think we imported Confucianism from Korea in the early period, but in the late 16th century, late 17th century, Japan started to establish Confucianism with the guide of the shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu and the great philosopher and philologist, and one interesting thing is great medical author Hayashi Rasan. They contributed to the establishment of Confucianism and Neo-Confucianism. Okay, so but I do not go into the detail. Okay, and okay, let me just talk about this. You might know Confucianism was a really important political philosophy, and Sikh born in 1130 and died in 1200. He was really active in establishing the, how do I say, the gentlemen's or the very able middle class activity. Okay, and during this period in China, there was a very strong and powerful emperor, and relatively young people started to follow loyally to the emperor. And to do that, Tzu created a kind of Neo-Confucianism which promised a kind of loyal following to the emperor. And at the same time, it had the influence upon the common people, and they wished for common people to follow their own advice, and finally the emperor. That is the first thing. And the second really important thing is about the Chinese or Han race and other people. If you look at the situation of China during this period, Asia, around the 12th century, the Asian part was the place which was dominated by the Han race, is pink and it's very small. And other races or Zhuhen or Saya or Liao or Dali, these are all not belong to Han race, and that are very strong idea of establishing the power, the situation of Han dynasty, of the Han race. Okay, so that is in the background. And as you know, the Tokugawa, Ieyasu or Tokugawa Bakufu, they started to have a relatively stable Japanese nation. They did not have very severe war with other countries, and they were relatively stable. Okay, and during that period, Japan started to have a kind of Neo-Confucianism. Okay, so next page. Okay, so now religion in Japan. Okay, and Confucianism usually takes a power of politics, power of giving morality, power of asking common people to be moral people and then follow the order. So that is the majority of the idea of Confucianism. Okay, but as many of you might know, it has the aspect of natural philosophy and technological policy. So, and one of the subjects which Confucianism believes that they are very good at dealing the problem is the problem of water for the newly created Edo. Okay, and many of you might know that Edo used to be in the 16th century a very marsh and very wetty place, and that was not a large city at all. That was, I would say, a small port in the rural area. So you might be able to look at something like this. Okay, this is a map of Tokyo at the present situation, and in the red part or red and brown part, these are mountains and hills. They are really high mountains and hills after hills. So that is the western aspect of Tokyo or Edo. Okay, and if you look at the right-hand side, it's a really very flat and wet and marsh. And I do think something like 200 years ago, these are really marsh, and there are aspect of typhoon and great flood in these areas. So, and these two areas are very separated in a very straight way. So we do have the mountains and hills in the landscape of Tokyo, and we do have the marsh and wetty land in the eastern world. And of course, many people were interested in dealing with these things. Okay, so that is an important part of this part of the geography of Tokyo. So, from the late 16th and early 20th century, Bakufu or the shogun tried to establish two water supplies. These are called Kanda and Tamagawa. Okay, so we do have two major water supplies from the mountainous or hilly area, and perhaps you might look at something like this. So it started from the most western side of this map, and then it came with at the center, and finally they reached the central part of Edo. Okay, so this is perhaps the very long period, a very long supply of water, and they are proud of this Tamagawa Josu. Okay, so and there are other josuin or other water supplies. And one of the reasons of water supply is, of course, it's very hard to drink the water taken from the marsh. So it's salty and it has, something like muddy, not spiceful, muddy ideas or taste. So this supplied to many people in Edo very fresh and clean water. Okay, so if you look at something like this, okay, the red part is Tamagawa Josui and the green part is Kanda water supply, and not just getting this area, but there are canals and water supply. So they do have really detailed supply of waters, and these waters were brought from the high western and northern end of Edo or Tokyo. So Edo and Tokyo had a very, very high ability of carrying water from the western part. Okay, and of course it's not just the urban area, and this is from the agricultural area of Japan, and you can look at on the left. You can look at the mountain, and on at the center you can look at the field for rice. Okay, and of course the rice needed water, and there's a constant supply for water from the mountainous places. Okay, so from the 17th and 18th century, both in urban area and rural areas, they became good at supplying water from mountain or from a pond or that kind of environmental changes. Okay, so this is the major power of Japan during the 17th and 18th century. Okay? Okay, now let me look at going to the argument about Confucianism. What is the major text? What is the major philosophical idea of the concept of water supply? And one of the really important candidates is, I do think, the Book of Changes, or Akihito in Chinese phrase. Okay, and Akihito is really important because it combines of two genres or two fields. The first is divination and telling people about your character, what will happen to your future, what is the situation of your family, and these are divinations. Okay, so these are really important part of Akihito. And the second important factor is natural philosophy. So they are interested in not just human beings, but I do think you know about the natural philosophy of element and what is the influence of these elements. So that is a major part of the Book of Changes. And as you can easily imagine, divination was really important for popular culture and trade in the law, and natural philosophy for intellectual and educated arguments. So what is really important about the Book of Changes is like this. Okay, one part, a very popular part, was responsible for the message to general people. Okay, that was not just an idea among intellectuals and powerful people. Okay, and the rest is natural philosophy, and the argument is very philosophical and very philological, and these are for intellectual and educated argument. So this Confucian philosophy and Confucian textbook, which is the Book of Changes, can talk to common people and talk to the intellectual people. So that might be an interesting way of using this Book of Changes. Okay. Okay, so I think you might laugh at 64 changes or the delineations, and I tried to understand some of the argument, but honestly, let me be honest, I have not yet grasped the argument. But this is very good for divination. Okay, and as you know, the yin and the yang system, and there are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. These are famous philosophical or natural philosophical ideas. Okay, so what is really important for people in Edo, both common people and intellectuals? What's really important is they are talking about, of course, water, they are talking about fire, they are talking about the earth. So these are really important parts when you think of a city which is repeatedly attacked by great fires almost every year, or they were thinking about the agriculture. That means you have to think about earth, and of course about water. Water is doing something upon the river, doing something for water supply. So these are really important points in their real life. Okay, and that is the okay. And you might think that this might be related with the Western humor theories. Yeah, and I would like to encourage you just to think about both the Western culture and Western humor theory and the Confucian idea of 5 elements in the world and society. So they both have to think about human body, they have to think about this world, they have to think about this universe, and that is you can do only with either Aristotelian philosophy or Chinese philosophy. So this is a very important part. Okay, and if you look at a lot of manuscripts or printed during the which were published during the Tokugawa period, 18th century, there are plenty of people who thought or who provided the service for divination, and there are many people came and they have something like bamboo taken from bamboo and something like chopstick like things. So that was the important tool for the divination, and there are a lot of things during the Edo period. And of course in the Meiji, Taisho and Showa period in the late 19th and earlier part of 20th century, they do have a lot of photographs of doing these divination. So divination is one of the really important parts for common people, for consumer culture, and there are a lot of important things. And one of the things that you have to notice is if you look at it's a Jinja, okay, the temple of Jinja, and so that was related with religion. Okay, so that is an important part. And next, and okay, and then let me look at finally the water supply in Tokugawa and Meiji period. First of all, Confucian natural philosophy and the Book of Changes were the basis of the supply of water and the control of rivers during the Tokugawa and early Meiji period. So to practice the institution of the new supply of water, or the stopping some supply of water and the control of rivers, almost always Confucian theory accompanies this kind of thing. Perhaps one of the most famous philosopher is Muro Kyuso, who was born in 1658 and died in 1734. He was a Confucian scholar and advisor to Tokugawa Yoshimune. Okay? So he was one of the leading, most great Confucian scholar in Japan. And he and Yoshimune and many people encountered with a lot of fires in the late 17th and early 18th century. There were almost every year a huge fire just attacked the city of Edo. As you might know, Edo had a lot of wooden houses, so it's very easy to destroy several times. That was the situation. So Tokugawa Yoshimune just asked Muro Kyuso and how to do something against the fire. And the answer of Kyuso is perhaps you can answer. what is the to the question of how to what we should do to the repetition of fire? What are the answer given by Q? Can you answer?
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Okay, it's fire, and to do that, so you need water. Okay, so due to the philosophical framework, you should think of water. So this answer by Kyuso was published, I think, in relatively quickly. And Kyuso Kenkaroku, and this is one of the important papers, and I would like to read from the pamphlet. Okay, I quote, from the latter part of the 1950s, the wind. So really important is wind. Okay, so in the environment, what's really important was wind. The wind has become somewhat light. When the wind is particularly strong, one cannot see the sky, and it is also related with frequent fire. As Chantz has argued, originally wind is a fire of earth and arrives from the earth. So it's about talking about these five elements, and of course he quoted Chantz, who is one of the great Chinese philosophers, and then he said this is a completely very high skill in constructing the Confucian argument. Okay, and our water supplies cut the earth's pulse, the earth's spirit does not flow and becomes weak. Recent wind thus wanders around disorderly and invites the fire to be disorderly and wild. So this is the reading using the Western philosophical framework of the rise and repeated rises of the fires, and what they could do was thinking about the water supply. Okay, and finally, Kyuso answered that we did have 6 water supply rules, but let's make it smaller. And he, I think in 1722, he asked the shogun to decrease the number of water supply, and he accepted. Okay, so this might be a very wrong attitude, but still you have to think about the power of Eastern philosophical ideas. So this is for element. Okay. Now, of course, in Japan, during the Tokugawa period, we had a lot of ideas on how to deal with the environment. Okay? And one of the most important things is the river control in urban and rural areas. In the 17th and 18th century, many cities and many villages, or many middle-sized cities, or many ports, they are interested in dealing with these things. Okay, and there are plenty of these things, and I do think in something like 1910 or 1920s, there are plenty of very thick 1,000 pages, and there are hundreds and hundreds of small cities, small villages to introduce the changing the river's flow and that kind of thing. And one of these, and there are, you can have really a lot of prints. Okay, and one of the figures is Odaka Atsutada. He was born in 1830 and died in 1901. He was from the wealthy farmer, industrialist, businessman, bank manager, and of course teacher of Confucianism for boys in a small town in Santan. So he came to this thing and he told about, okay, let's think about river control. Okay, and his basic idea was, oh, can you answer? What is the basic framework of his answering to this question? Of course, Confucian ideas of natural philosophy. So it's about talking water. Okay, so if you are talking about water, you need to think about something of fire, something of earth, and these are really important part. Okay, and another important part is, okay, what do you think a really important part for this guy, Odaka Astada? Can you answer? Okay. Okay. Oh, to quote great Chinese philosopher. So this is what they are doing. This is not just observation, not just experiment. You have to read these ancient classical texts. So, so he quoted, he published a new argument of river control in 1892, and it said, okay, and I'm sorry, during the Tokugawa period, there are plenty and plenty of attempts at just entering into the river and these kind of things. So this is the now the present situation of Japanese landscape, which is not very good, but still it has the the protection created during the early modern period. So a lot of forest and these kind were established in many areas. Okay. Okay, and then Odaka used the use of Confucian natural philosophy. So they use the idea of water, earth, and analogy of human body. So this explained a lot about why the Confucians are really interested in medicine, and they practiced medicine, and that is a really important part. And then Odaka mentions to Confucius, Mencius, and VC. They are all relatively very famous Chinese philosophers. Okay, so and if you want to read these things, Chisui Shinsaku, and they talked about water and about the lake, about the earth, and he quoted Confucian and other philosophers. So this is very Confucian ideas. So this is not just a practical observation. It has included the Chinese philosophical tradition at the end of the 19th century. Okay. So let me just conclude. Okay. Now I have looked at mainly the Japan in the Tokugawa period. Okay. And I do think that importance of science and natural philosophy. And then they thought that if you think about water, okay, water has, of course, religious meaning. Water had a lot of, I don't know, might be emotional meaning for water. But they tried to think in terms of natural philosophy of the ancient Chinese tradition. Okay, so that is an important part. And when they thought about water, they were thinking about not just water, but something related with water. So fire was the major background information about thinking about water. And of course, I think I didn't mention about agriculture. If you think about mid-18th century reform of agriculture, many farmers asked for water to get for their economical advancement. Okay, so in this world, the water and let's call this something like the public health or something like public economy was really important. Okay, so we need to think about the crucial role of Confucianism in influencing the environment, economy, politics, and of course popular culture and agricultural production on water. Okay, so this is the end of my lecture, and thank you so much for listening to my lecture. Thank you.